Scorpio won't stop until they know the truth. Have you ever lied to someone and halfway through the lie realized they already knew? They didn't accuse you. They didn't raise their voice. They didn't even look angry. They just looked at you for a few seconds longer than normal. And suddenly, you knew. They noticed something. Maybe they didn't know everything, but they knew something wasn't right. That's where Scorpio becomes fascinating. Because Scorpio isn't always looking for a confession. Sometimes, they're looking for the missing piece. A strange pause. A story that doesn't quite match. A detail that changed. A reaction that doesn't fit the situation. And once Scorpio notices that something doesn't add up, their brain can become incredibly difficult to shut off. Not because they enjoy drama, not necessarily because they're suspicious of everyone, but because uncertainty bothers them. And there's one thing Scorpio often wants more than revenge: the truth. Twist number 1. Scorpio notices the gap. Imagine someone tells you a story. Everything sounds normal. You understand what happened. Then, 3 days later, they tell the same story again. But one tiny detail has changed. Most people won't notice. Scorpio might. Not because they're sitting there trying to interrogate you. They simply remember. That's the important part. Scorpio may remember conversations much more emotionally than people realize. Not just the words, the atmosphere, the timing, the reaction. What happened before the conversation? What happened immediately afterward? And when two pieces don't fit, their brain notices the gap. Think about a puzzle. You can have 99 pieces perfectly connected, but if one piece is missing, your eyes keep returning to that empty space. That's what unanswered questions can do. They create psychological tension. And Scorpio may feel that tension very strongly. The problem is, once the question exists, they want the answer. The first mistake people make. Here's where people often make the situation worse. They give Scorpio a vague answer. Nothing happened. You're overthinking. Don't worry about it. It's not important. Maybe those answers are true, but if Scorpio already noticed something unusual, vagueness doesn't always calm them down. It can do the opposite. Because now there's another question. Why won't you explain it? And suddenly, the original mystery becomes a second mystery, then a third. And now Scorpio isn't only trying to understand what happened, they're trying to understand why you don't want to explain what happened. That's how a tiny inconsistency can become a much bigger psychological problem. Twist number 2. Scorpio may investigate without looking like they're investigating. This is where Scorpio can surprise people. They don't necessarily ask, "Are you lying?" They might ask something completely unrelated, a casual question, then another, then later, something else. And they're comparing the answers. Not necessarily consciously, they're building a picture. Imagine watching a detective reconstruct a crime scene. The detective doesn't need to know everything immediately. They collect fragments. One statement, one timestamp, one photograph, one detail. Eventually, the pieces form a pattern. Scorpio can sometimes operate similarly. One detail alone means nothing, but 10 details pointing in the same direction? Now the situation looks different. And that's why Scorpio can sometimes seem incredibly patient. They're not necessarily confused, they're collecting information. But here's the danger. There's a serious problem with this ability. Sometimes, the brain wants the pattern to exist. Imagine seeing a face in the clouds. Once you notice it, you can't unsee it. But the face isn't actually there. Your brain created the pattern. The same thing can happen with suspicion. Scorpio notices one unusual behavior, then another, and suddenly, everything starts looking like evidence. That's where intuition can turn into overthinking. And that's something Scorpio has to watch carefully, because there is a huge difference between something feels wrong and, therefore, something must be wrong. The first is intuition. The second is a conclusion, and conclusions need evidence. Twist number 3. Scorpio doesn't always want to catch you. This is one of the biggest misconceptions. People sometimes assume Scorpio is trying to expose them, catch them, humiliate them, prove that they were right. But sometimes, Scorpio doesn't care about winning. They simply want reality to make sense. Think about finding a strange noise in your car. You don't necessarily want the car to be broken. You want to know what the noise is, because not knowing is worse. That's how Scorpio can approach uncertainty. Tell me what actually happened. Even if the truth hurts, at least it's real. A painful truth can be processed. An unanswered question keeps repeating. That's why Scorpio may prefer an uncomfortable conversation to a comfortable lie. Because once the truth is known, they can make a decision. Without the truth, they're trapped in possibilities. The big reveal. And here's the most interesting part. Scorpio's obsession with truth isn't always about other people. Sometimes it's about themselves. They want to know, why did I feel this way? Why did that person affect me so much? Why can't I let this go? Why did I react like that? What am I actually afraid of? That's a different kind of investigation, and perhaps it's the most important one. Because you can spend years trying to understand everyone else, while never examining yourself. Scorpio's greatest psychological growth can happen when they turn the same level of observation inward. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with them?" ask, "What is this situation showing me about myself?" That's when curiosity becomes wisdom. When Scorpio stops asking questions. Now, here's the part that sounds strange. People often think the dangerous moment is when Scorpio starts asking questions. Sometimes, it's the opposite. The dangerous moment is when Scorpio stops. Because as long as they're asking, they're still trying to understand. They're still interested. They're still giving the situation a chance to make sense. But when the questions disappear, it may mean they've already reached a conclusion. And at that point, you may never know exactly what they discovered. They simply become quieter, more distant, more certain, and they move differently. That's why communication matters. If something is wrong, tell them. If you made a mistake, admit it. If you don't know the answer, say you don't know. Because uncertainty can be repaired. Dishonesty is much harder to repair. Final lesson. If you're dealing with a Scorpio, don't assume you have to tell them everything immediately. Privacy is normal. Everyone deserves boundaries. But don't deliberately create confusion and then blame Scorpio for noticing it. If something changed, explain it. If you need space, say so. If you made a mistake, own it. Because the truth may hurt for a moment, but a lie creates a second problem, and then another, and another, until eventually, Scorpio isn't trying to understand the original situation anymore. They're trying to understand you. And that's when things become difficult. But if you're a Scorpio yourself, remember this. Not every unexplained detail is a hidden betrayal. Not every strange feeling is proof. Not every unanswered question needs an immediate investigation. Sometimes, people are simply tired. distracted, confused, human. Your intuition can be powerful, but your intuition deserves evidence before it becomes a verdict. Because the strongest version of Scorpio isn't the person who discovers every secret. It's the person who knows the difference between a feeling, a possibility, and the truth. And perhaps that's the real secret. Scorpio doesn't need to know everything. They need to know what is real. Because once they know what's real, they can handle almost anything. The truth may break their heart. It may disappoint them. It may change the relationship. But at least they can stop wondering. And sometimes, that's all Scorpio was looking for from the beginning. Not revenge, not control, not drama. Just one simple answer. What actually happened? And if you give them the truth, you may be surprised by how much they can handle. But if you give them a lie, don't be surprised when they eventually find the missing piece. Because Scorpio may not always tell you what they know. Sometimes, they'll simply look at you, smile, and say nothing. What's worse, a painful truth or a comfortable lie? And if you're a Scorpio, leave a below. Because sometimes, Scorpio doesn't need to catch you lying. They just need to notice that your story doesn't make sense.